Good afternoon, and welcome to this session where we'll be discussing security and the evolving role of the CISO. Over the past 12 to 15 months, all organizations, employees, and customers have had to make significant changes in their work styles. In-person meetings have given way to video conferences. Office cubicles are now at home. And given the exigencies of the pandemic, organizations have been compelled to make numerous changes to the way they deploy, run, manage IT systems and processes. So quite naturally, this extended enterprise perimeter has become the target of malicious actors. And a number of serious incidents and data breaches have been reported. However, with customers continuing to accelerate towards consuming more and more digital services, it has become imperative for organizations to ensure that trust and confidence in systems is not compromised. So it's no surprise that cybersecurity leaders are under greater pressure than before to secure enterprise assets in a digitally transforming organization, where the technology landscape today spans a wide range of in-premise applications and systems as well as cloud-delivered systems. To talk about some of these issues and challenges, we have with us some experts in the area of cybersecurity, and I will request all delegates viewing this session to post your queries in the chat box, and we will take them at the end of the session. Our first guest today is Dr. Durga Prasad Dubey, Executive Vice President and Group CISO, Reliance Industries. Dr. Dubey wears many hats: author, researcher, teacher, and cybersecurity professional with more than 30 years of experience in public, private, academic, and research organizations. Dr. Dubey is currently with Reliance Industries, where he is responsible for information security and information risk management processes. He has in the past worked with the Reserve Bank of India in various business and technology roles for over 2 decades. Welcome, Dr. Dubey.
Thank you, sir.
I'm also very pleased to introduce Mr. Alain Sanchez, EMEA CISO and Senior Evangelist with Fortinet, who's joining us from France. Alain has 20 years of executive engagement experience in the network and telecommunications domain. Alain joined the Fortinet CISO office from Huawei Global Consulting, where he was in charge of the digital transformation practice, advising the board of tier 1 service providers and Fortune 500 companies engaged in major digital transformation programs. So welcome, Alain, to this fireside chat. I'm also very pleased to introduce Rajesh Maurya, Regional Vice President, India and SAARC at Fortinet. Rajesh has over 25 years of experience in IT. He's held a variety of roles in sales, marketing, and channel management. He's been with Fortinet since 2004, so I guess many of you know him already. And he's been instrumental in expanding the company's operations in India by adding more services to its wide range of solution offerings. So welcome, Rajesh. So let me start off this discussion today by asking Dr. Dubey, what has changed in the business landscape over the past 12 months, which has impacted the CISO function?
Okay, Giridhar, thanks, and happy to be here. What I think is, as I've been saying very often, that these last 12 months, there is a lot of acceleration in the digital transformation process. Otherwise, it would have happened, but this, in a way, this pandemic has kind of behaved as a catalyst and accelerated the digital transformation process. When I say digital transformation process, I am not going to the semantics of what is digital transformation, what are the features of digital transformation. I would rather say that the kind of thing which happens in digital transformation is actually a recipe for the attackers. Why I say that? If you look at digital transformation, what happens is there is an increase in the attack surface because of large-scale digitizations. You may call it a lot of asset creation, a lot of digital asset creation, but for a CISO, these are all creation of attack surfaces. Then there are a lot of proliferating increased use of open source solutions. And when there are a lot of open source solutions used in any enterprises, that increases the supply chain risk, which you have to be careful enough. Then when you move the digital assets to the cloud, then our security visibility is little decreased, and it creates additional compliance challenge. Yes. And since everything goes to the internet presence also gets increased, and the attack surface gets increased, and the challenges relating to access control, real-time monitoring, all those things comes to the picture. Then there's a requirement in this digital transformation to give devices and network agnostic access from the corporate network. That again has the challenges of identification and data protections. Then one of the fundamental problem which all of us have been facing, anybody who is a CISO must be relating to themselves, is it's like integrating SecOps with the DevOps. We have been saying it is DevSecOps, but DevOps is kind of stabilized. The SecOps parts of the DevOps is a great challenge. A challenge in terms of integrating with different tools, the challenge in terms of getting the right kind of skill to do the SecOps. So this is the kind of problem which is happening. And the last thing which I say before I give it back to Giridhar is like the democratization of the technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning. Not that AI and machine learning is only used by the IT for digital transformation. It is also used for adversarial use, for hacking the system, for doing a lot of different abusive things. And that's very important from a CISO perspective to keep notice and prepare your de-risking strategy. Thank you, Giridhar.
Thank you, Dr. Dubey. I think so. The three key points that you said was, there's a greater attack surface now. There is the issue of integrating DevSecOps correctly within the application development, and the fact that democratization of technology also means the attackers have access to the same kinds of or similar kinds of tools that the people who are defending them from the attacks. So I think these are very interesting points that you have brought up, and I'd like to ask Alan. Alan, from your experience in advising global companies, how do you see the role of what has impacted the CISO function? What are the challenges that you see there?
Thank you, and I really like what Dr. Duga just said. It really goes into what I contemplate every day. Up until this morning, I was in the northeast of Europe. And this is a little bit a glimpse in the next future, because that part of Europe has opened. Maybe it's just a window and a new wave of pandemic will happen, but I was there and I met for the first time 400 CISO and CIO at a meeting that is called Confare. And first of all, many of the things of the phenomenon that Dr. Duga described were present. The democratization of some of the technologies that are not only used by us, but also by the bad guys is one of the great problems. I saw as well this in the eyes of the people over there. And they were from various industries, chemical industries, utilities industry, manufacturing, big technology industries in Austria. And they have proven over the last 18 months that the connected infrastructure, the sensors, the digital control system, the connected meters have enabled not only to maintain the business continuity, but to innovate, to continue the digital transformation at the same time. And that was something very positive. And they have proven, we have proven through our management that we could significantly save costs by all these integrations. But at the same time, there is a negative close to this positive. And that duality of the CISO role in this glimpse of the future, where we will all be able to be together and have this meeting around a real table, there is a little bit of negative painted. First of all this infrastructure that we have modified to make them even more high performing have increased in criticality. They are more and more important, and the information system as well as the industrial system in oil and gas have become more critical. We can regulate temperature when we go in a distillation process at a fraction of the degrees that we could do only a couple of years ago. We have integrated the process and the production together, but when there is an interruption, when there is a data breach, then it's a bigger set of this process that is affected. And what can enter via IT can disrupt OT. So the convergence has continued, but again, significant amount of criticality. So we have to address the critical users case of this integration between OT and IT in the industry world, in the utility world, in the petrochemical world. And there are areas that we need always to have in place. We have to secure the critical endpoints. Some of the things that we have revealed these 18 months is the rise of the edge. The edge is becoming more and more important in the industry because the network is increasing in capacity. It happens in the network world what happened in the management world that we call empowerment. Give power to the people close to the operation. You will streamline your operation. You will increase innovation. And that ability to have the edge taking some technical decision, business decision, economical decision also makes the edge a target for the hackers. So in this point of view, if you look even at our great advanced technologies that have accelerated the use of the cloud, etc., the cloud is just another edge. You have the LAN edge, the WAN edge, the middleware between the OT and the regulation system. It's just another edge. So we have to think in a flat, multidimensional, and even more critical information system that we have as a community to deal with. And this is what I see being in the eyes of my peers and across the industry, and Dr. Dugat said very beautifully, this is what I see as the next challenges for us moving forward.
Thank you, Alan. And also, I want to ask Rajesh a question. You know, he's been working in the Indian market for a very long while, and particularly in this area of security. So, Rajesh, how well do you think current security technologies and solutions are helping the CISO? What are the limitations you see?
Yeah, so not limitation. It's about, if you bought an expensive car, how effectively you're able to use it, basically. For me, put it in layman's terms, but specifically speaking in India, I think, buying technology, I think has always been a challenge firstly, because security budgets have always been a challenge for all the CISOs to manage, basically. I think once upon a time, the security budget was close to 6 to 7% of the overall, IT spend for security, basically. Now, I think with, security and threat becoming a major, having, a good understanding all board members across, basically, I think now even now the spend is close to 10% only, basically. So I think, it's always been a challenge for the CISO India to be able to maximize, what they are going to be able to use in terms of technology, basically. I think buying product is one part, basically, and being able to have, the right set of people to be able to manage and, being able to really understand the product, to be able to implement it in such a way that, you're able to get a clear dashboard and a clear understanding and what is happening on a network. And you have those controls in place to be able to take actions. Because in today's world, I don't think the question is whether you'll get attacked. I think everybody knows you're going to get attacked, basically. Now, have you identified, what you need to protect, basically, whether it is your remote user, whether it is a cloud application, whether it is your, mobile or IoT devices, whether you're talking about insider threat, whether you're talking about data leaks, whether you're talking about, hacking attempts, or I don't know whether we should be talking about spyware in India at this point in time, but even, spyware, basically. So I think it's very critical to understand, whether you have those and whether those products have been deployed, whatever products you have bought, basically have been deployed in the right levels to give you controls where you can take action. Because like I said, I don't think, it is anymore that, you're not going to get attacked. And when you're talking about attack, you're not really talking about a hacker attacking, right? Phishing is an attack, basically. You're getting a mail in spam is an attack, basically. So now it all depends upon, how you put those technologies in use, basically. And I've seen more and more people in India, CISOs and board members now being very aware of it. But still, if I have to put it in perspective of, whether, people have put it in the right, assessment-based configuration and patch management, whether it's been implemented in the right way, basically. It's an aspect. whether you bought the product or not, basically, whether a security product is not there, but whether have you done your patch management, whether, you've defined and reduced your attack surface, basically, these are all aspects. I might be a product company and, we are good at that, basically, but also being able to educate the customer, whether, they've done the basics that is required to be able to take care of the network in terms of, like I said, reducing your attack surface, whether patch management and configuration changes have been done, whether application whitelisted are followed or checking vulnerabilities are followed in your organization or whether authentication and encryption. Now, in this case, today, we are talking about everybody working remotely. Earlier, also people were working remotely, right? We were using our handphones and, IoT devices to connect to official networks, basically. So had there been authentication and proper encryption in place, basically? There are solutions for authentication, there are solutions for encryption, basically, but were they in place, basically? Whether the defined, policy existed for a secure remote user to be able to access application in your organization or not. So I think these are very, very clear thing, along with the dashboard of activity monitoring, whether, you are having a clear response mechanism, whether your staff is trained to be able to take care of this response mechanism. What happens when you get attacked,
So
is also an aspect, basically. Obviously, we've seen people investing into SIEM, SOAR solutions. Now we're talking about SASE, we're talking about XDR, we're talking about EDR once upon a time. So there are a lot of solutions available, and I think even in India, depending upon how critical your data is, people have implemented solutions, basically. But I still feel, that because there's a big gap in having skilled people to be able to take care of these solutions, dependencies are still very, very high, basically. That's a perspective that I would like to put from my side, basically.
Thanks, Rajesh. I think these are important points that you've made, and I'd like to ask Dr. Dubey this point which comes up very frequently, which is the concept of having best in breed solutions, and so therefore having siloed technologies and being able to effectively use the solutions that are there. So what is your view on that?
Okay. So if I am supposed to use all the technologies which are offered by various vendors, then I will be missing the forest for the trees. I will be only using the technology. I will not get anything out of it. So giving the same example, I'll take a cue from Rajesh. Rajesh told about the car example. So for me, car is not a technology. Car is the ultimate thing which I want to drive. Car is a combination of technology. So there are so many technology inside a car. Let's hypothetically think that the car is having a technology which is, let's say, steering is one technology, the tire is itself is a technology, the gear is a technology. Let's say all other things are manufactured by different companies, and they don't coordinate with each other. That is not a central dashboard. Will the car run? The car will not run. And the car will be potential object for doing some abusive things, accidents, and all sort of things. So what I'm trying to say is, all what you are using, all technologies or tools are what you are using, you have to have some mechanism of coordinating among them. If you are not doing a coordinated action of all security technologies, then you are not achieving, you may be doing a lot of duplication of effort, and we are not really achieving the mission. I always give the example of human immunity with this cyber security. If you look at the human immunity, there are so many controls inside a human, but all these controls inside a human, they do a very coordinated action. So in the cyber, we have so many controls, including the operating system native controls. But the fundamental problem which happens for us is we really take a lot of time in buying another solution, which add to our overheads, which is called a source solution, which does only orchestrations. And orchestrations has tremendous challenge of integration with different technologies. So all what the new generation CISOs have been facing, apart from the traditional problem of trade-off, which you have been facing traditionally, because entire CISO job is 67% is managing the trade-offs. But here, there is a most difficult problem which we all have been facing is integrating the technologies, because today there is a need to get feedback from different technologies and make a coordinated action. So that is where a lot of companies, I'm sure Fortinet also might be thinking like that, but everybody is thinking in that line. So that is one area which I think all of us should work towards, is gone are the days when you can use a siloed technologies. Even if you use a siloed technology, that technology should have sufficient what you call in technological language is you have the API, the kind of protocols which is need to talk to the other technologies seamlessly, so that we get a full view of what's happening in my enterprise, number one. Then number two is like what Alan was talking about IT, OT integrations, and he talked about something about edge. So it's very important, like you should understand what is your edge. Because sometimes people get carried away and think that for everybody, internet is the edge. So the edge is different from different technologies. Like for OT, to start with, everybody should think that the IT OT connect is the edge, which has to be taken care of. So for securing OT and having a solution which takes input logs from the OT applications and giving you a situational awareness by integrating with all IT logs is something which I have not seen many successful companies have been doing. I would happy to learn from the panelists here, but here the problem is not with the technology which is capable of doing it. The problem here is with the OT service providers or the OT vendors. For OT vendors, the philosophy of security is little different. The philosophy of security for them, the criticality, the confidentiality, the integrity is not important for them. For them, what is important is the availability. The moment you say them that we will be taking logs from your device or from your applications, they would have a lot of apprehensions about the availability of their system, the throughput of their system, which actually is very important. If my OT system doesn't work for even half a second, there is a tremendous problem to my manufacturing plant. So I can't afford anything which is related to availability in the OT network. And most of the time, most of the people, we are maybe little less, but I have seen many companies around the world, they have tremendous dependence on the OT vendors. So everything what they do in the OT solution is dependent on the vendors because it's kind of a black box for them. So this is a problem which needs to be really solved, not only again on silos that technology companies like Fortinet making a solutions and trying to say that they can solve this OT security problem. No, it can't happen. It has to happen only when they collaborate with the OT software vendors and the people like us, and jointly they develop something and then go to the market telling that if we're using this kind of a OT systems or majority of the OT systems, then we have tested with that kind of a system and it doesn't create any kind of throughput problem. It doesn't create any kind of availability problem. That is when this kind of thing works. And another problem which Rajesh was talking, so I was very curious to, for the last couple of months, rather year, 1 year or so, I've been seriously thinking that all what we are spending on authentication is actually a waste. We don't need any authentications. Why you need an authentication? If I know Giridhar is coming to my network, if I'm able to identify Giridhar, why do I need Giridhar to punch his password and give an OTP? All are overheads for me. Only thing which I want to know is he is Giridhar. That's all. If I want to identify a person, I don't need an authentication. I want to give a statement here. If identification proper, authentication is not required.
So I think that's a provocative point that you made, Dr. Dubey, and I'd like to ask Alan to, comment on that. Is authentication required if identification is good enough?
So on that very last point, it's a little bit like you say, I don't need the brakes on my car because I have excellent safety belts, okay? You need both. You need various levels of active and passive security to secure a car. Now, there is something, an analogy that Dr. Durga has very well pointed out. It is the immunology of the body, right? There are very completely different security systems in the body. Some are based on the temperature because the elevation of temperature enables a faster reaction of biochemical enzymatic reactions. But then you have also a different type of protection, which is the recognition of an alien inside your body. And then a completely different kind of reactions happen with macromolecules that understand in the space the variations of the attackers. Now, what makes the human body resilient over 20,000 plus years is that all these defense mechanisms are all under a same human fabric, which is our DNA, our very proper nature. So we could not be using some of the, immediately we could not be using some of the immunitary system of another species, right? So, and in cybersecurity, the evolution is going into that direction. We're not talking about a body fabric, but we're talking about a cybersecurity fabric, which is an integrated set of solutions that are automated, integrated, and that enables a broader scope of understanding of all the various attacks. And in that sense, maybe have we seen in the last couple of years, but with an acceleration that Dr. Duga has underlined very well, the end of the old school best of breed purchasing of cybersecurity. Find me the best antivirus, then find me the best network firewall, and then find me the best identity management. And someone else will do the integration work later, except that we don't have time for that. We're talking milliseconds where you used to have weeks to identify, to recognize, and to respond. So this contraction of time, this time base that is so much reduced, has accelerated the holistic vision of cybersecurity and not point solutions of cybersecurity. And one last point is holistic does not mean monopolistic. You don't need to purchase all your network from the same vendor. And because it's not realistic, it doesn't happen in reality, particularly when you talk about OT. There are so many different types of sensors, so many different phenomena that have to be monitored, right? That you cannot imagine a monopolistic view, but you can imagine a holistic view where you can have a visibility, a little bit like, to paraphrase the same parallel of the body, a little analogy could be that you monitor those different sensors. You don't need to have the same exact way of working, but you see gaps between what normal is. Now, to see these gaps, you need to include artificial intelligence in the equation, with all the risks that we highlighted at the beginning of this discussion, but still, because the human brain cannot do manual correlations between 10,000 sensors in a plant. Is that normal? I compare this temperature to the normal pressure, then I come back to the middleware and I do that manually. And last time I did that and I had the network CPU usage that was rising, then by that time it was an attack, but we saw it in another plant that it was not an attack. You become crazy. You kill your people to the task in the NOC and in the SOC, particularly when you have in charge the OT security. You need machine learning to understand what normal is. And from this baseline behavioral, you take a decision based on this baseline behavioral. But again, machine learning is not the panacea. The machine does not learn overnight what normal is in a factory. It takes weeks, sometimes 28 weeks. I was discussing in a real time with a real client that we are protecting 26 years for a machine learning process, 26 weeks, sorry, to understand when there is a maintenance, we have a different set of parameter. When there is a production phase one, there is a different set of parameter. If you raise alarm anytime after learning in the first hour, you continue to kill your people to the task because you have too many false positives to deal with. And that is not a panacea. So it's starting to become something efficient when you have all these elements of the cybersecurity fabric that talk together, that learn together, and that are submitted what you want to do, what you consider the risk you want to take in a production environment, in a monitoring environment, because those thresholds, it's not one size fits all. One application can be considered extremely dangerous in a production environment, and it's a very, very healthy and legitimate application into the business analytics environment, and everything is connected. So in a nutshell, integration is very important, holistic, but not monopolistic, and always keep in mind that you have to adapt this technology to your own risk equation. And the CISO has to learn this new language. The risk was a language of the CFO, you remember. And now we learn this new language, and then we can talk to our business stakeholders. Dr. Duga, you were to say something.
No, I was actually listening to you, and I don't think that both of us are talking different things. Maybe the narratives are different, but I don't disagree with whatever you said. But I just wanted to, again, say the same thing which I have said earlier, but little elaborate on that so that it's not misquoted. When I say that, I'm sure you all will agree with me. If, again, I give the same example, if I meet Giridhar, before calling him, hi Giridhar, would I ask him that show me your passport? Definitely I will not do that, because I understand that he is Giridhar. In case of virtual world, in the technology world, if I don't see Giridhar, and if I have not sufficient evidences of this person is not Giridhar, may not be Giridhar, then only I should ask for authentication, which I say is a context-based authentication or a risk-based authentication or adaptive authentications. If I'm 100% sure, it is one person who comes at 10 o'clock and uses the same device and log in at the same time and log into the same system, I don't think that we should spend time in unnecessarily talking about authentication. Authentication should always be context-based.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. Say, for instance, Giridhar's car keys are stolen, right? So the car thinks it's Giridhar's entering because the car recognized the key. But inside the car, you have a behavioral mechanism that says, yes, the key is authentication, and I recognize, I put the mirror like Giridhar's like them, I put the seat like Giridhar's like them, but the speed is too high. And Giridhar would never drive like that. He has never used this itinerary. He never parks like this. So even if the authentication key, the key for the car is the authentication, seems to be okay, the context in which Giridhar's car is used is not his context. And then you can raise a flag. So you see, it's authentication, but also behavior analytics. And sometimes it can help us, even if it's us in the car, but this day we are not in a condition to drive. So the car recognizes you, but say, sorry, sir, it's too late. You're too old. Maybe you had an excellent dinner, but I'm not starting, right? And that is the kind of thing that artificial intelligence and machine learning can help us do in the cybersecurity world.
Yeah.
Very interesting discussion that we've had. And, I want to change gears a little bit and talk about, in the last 10 minutes or so, about the new security paradigms that we are all talking about. And one of them is zero trust. So maybe I'd like to have your thoughts on, what is zero trust? Is it practical? How far are you implementing it? Or is it just another buzzword for something that's already existed?
So let me take this. Everything has a time, and sometimes something clicks. So the word zero trust clicked actually. So everybody is talking about zero trust. So I just give you my experience. So I thought that I am a very smart CISO. So I took it to the board and I said that we would be implementing zero trust, and I explained them what is zero trust. Believe you me, I got a strong resistance from the board. Precisely not that you don't implement that, precisely that don't call it zero trust. They were saying me that you calling security as a zero trust gives a different branding to the users. That means you don't trust anybody, which is not correct from an organization like us. You can't call it zero trust. So we changed the topic and then did bit of research. And I don't find that any successful company who have implemented zero trust, they don't call it zero trust. Like if you see Google, who seems to have implemented zero trust, they call it Beyond Corporation. And Reliance is implementing zero trust in the name of Aetna. Pardon?
So it's the nomenclature that is changed.
Nomenclature that is changed.
But I think you're absolutely right. It's a terrible wording, right? When you think about it, if people understand it as I'm not going to trust my employee or I'm not going to trust my customer, human relationship, beautiful achievements are based on trust. And all of a sudden, someone comes with a wording that says zero trust. Now, the concept behind it is not, I don't love you anymore. It's not that. It's I need to fall in love of you every millisecond. So it's very beautiful. Every transaction, every device, every program, every middleware has to earn the right to be loved by the rest of the network. It's not, I give you the keys of my apartment forever and you can enter in every room. Is, what time is it? It's very rare that you go into the cellar at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. in the morning, right? So zero trust is perhaps a bad wording, but the idea behind it enables to put in place a real-time mechanism that grants or denies or flags or send a message to the need to use some of the network resources. So to go back to the car, yes, the car keys are stolen. In the cyber world, they are the credentials. Maybe username and password were stolen. But it's very rare for a robot to ask permission to open all the network files that are accessible through authentication. That is weird. So the zero trust mechanism would continue to say, well, it's, yes, the credentials are right, but still, I think it's suspicious. And that is the idea. And absolutely, the same way we need to adapt. The companies that are deploying it, don't call it with something that connotates, I stop to practice one of the most beautiful things between human people.
I just said about my experience, but that is not very material. The definition, the name is not very material. The essence of it is really material, what Giridhar was hinting at. So absolutely. For us, what we discussed in the last 30 minutes or so, we have kind of discussed a little bit of what the so-called zero trust should have. Essentially, if I say it in 3 words, what should be zero trust is number 1 sentence is zero trust should have a device agnostics, network agnostics, access to the network. So that means from everywhere using any device, you should be able to get into your network. Number 1. And once you get into the network, the entire, what Alain was also saying, the entire access mechanism or what you are doing, what device you are doing, everything is getting monitored on a real-time basis. And depending on the context, you are asked for the authentications. Authentication, there also risk-based authentications. And coming to inside, once you come inside and you land up in a place where you are supposed to land up, that is what is the concept of micro-segmentation comes to the picture. So you have a identification mechanism, strong identification mechanism. Mind it, I'm saying again that you have a strong identification mechanism in case of zero trust. You have an access gateway, which is understanding the access context, and you have a real-time monitoring, which is happening, and you have a micro-segmentation where lateral flow is restricted, and all this information and going back and giving it to the access mechanism, the identification mechanism, to make sure that each time somebody accesses, your context is real-time and very clear. So this is what is essentially the zero trust. So it is not something, a combination of 4 or 5 tools. It's actually a journey which has to happen. You cannot say that I have a zero trust project which can happen in 2-3 months or even 6 months. You have to make sure that all our applications are moving to the zero trust principles. There are few principles of zero trust, and that make that happen. Apart from the technology and its coordination, you will need a people's mindset also to make zero trust completely successful. I would give an example of Google. So it is a good thing. So I may be quoted. I have no problem. So Google successfully made it. One of the reasons is they are very smart guys, and another reason is that all what they use in the zero trust network is all developed by them only. Even their access gateway is Google's access gateway. Their device is a Chromebook. Their browser is a Chrome browser. Their every tool which Google is using in the zero trust framework is developed by them. So coordination becomes much more easier. But for us, we'll be using so many things. So coordination becomes a challenge. So we come back to our earlier problem that all of us have been facing, that all these vendors who are in the market space today, providing security technology, should be cognizant of this fact that they cannot sell a technology which doesn't have an API, who doesn't have the potential to integrate with others and coordinate with others. This is the basic principle of security which is emerging now.
Thank you, Dr. Dubey. I think some very valid points that you have made. I think we have had a very interesting conversation with Alan, giving his perspectives. I think it's been a lovely interchange of ideas, and I would just like Rajesh to, conclude this session with a few closing thoughts from his side.
Yeah, so good listening, and thanks. It's always good to be able to get people's perspective. I always thought technology has now become a business enabler basically, and I'm happy that technology is still not started thinking like human brain, and it still doesn't have emotions basically. The moment technology has the human brain and emotions, then I think we are replaced. We no longer are required on Earth basically. So we were like talking, on authentication. I feel when we talk authentication, it's not that and we are talking about zero trust. Luckily, it is not zero trust.
Rajesh, when technology has a brain, it creates another problem for us. Today, we have a technology. When you say that 100% patching, it does 100% patching. But if you're the human being who has emotions, if you say them follow the discipline, they don't follow because they have emotions. If the technology has emotions, they would not follow our instructions, which is another problem for us.
Sir, I am totally with you. Unfortunately, like I said, we want to do business, because of which business requirement is to now increase your digital assets. I was very happy that, my passbook was updated with my money in the bank, Now it no longer happens, Now whatever the bank puts me as a statement, it comes on email. I have to believe that, that is the money that I have in the bank. It's unfortunate, but that is how it is basically. And with RBI now talking about digital currency, I'm presuming that, it is only going to be digital. So it's going to be the numbers basically, nothing more. Right. It's going to be zeros and one basically. But my perspective over here, I think when we're talking about business, we're talking about controls basically, because, in a business, depending upon what type of business it is, basically, there are various people who are responsible for various activities, right? IT being one part of it, basically, whether we have controls in place is what the perspective is, I think, So whether you like it or not, whether you like to call it a zero trust access, in fact, zero trust network, luckily, and now we're talking about ZTNA, zero trust network and access, basically, So that's what we're talking about. Unfortunately, the edge has, people have got used to, increasing the edge. And like we talked about edge, it's not only about, the endpoints, the IoT devices, the cloud computing environments, your data centers, your edge is ever expanding. Now we're talking about, accessing various applications, giving access to people everywhere, because this is all the way, helping you meet your business objective. If had we not had, quantum computing, or had we not had, remote access, businesses today in this era would have been really in a bad shape, basically, I think. So it's lucky that, we had remote computing, and it's good that we had, cloud computing, that, businesses are still running and they are able to leverage things, basically. So I believe, when we talk security, it's all about controls, because businesses are not only, talking about, just running the environment basically, but also talking about proof. Like everybody is asking for proof, right? What's happening in your network, whether it is secured, whether you followed the norms, because you're doing business with so many business partners now, whether the security standards have been followed, whether the norms have been followed, because it's not only about talking about, whether you trust the guy because he's working for you, basically. is very, something called as verifiable trust. Now it's all about verifiable trust. How do you verify the trust? Like I could, probably, try and log in. Just to give you an example, everybody knows about it. The biggest IoT attack that happened in the US, why was it basically? It was because of one compromised password. The identity of the guy was established, right? They used the identity of the person because it was a compromised password, and they got into the network, and a big ransomware attack happened basically. Now everybody trusted that user. The systems also trusted that user. Had there been an authentication solution, that attack would have never happened, and such a big ransomware attack would have been avoided, because an authentication system would have helped them to do that. But there was no authentication system. The user got the hacker got into it and created such a big attack. So I think it's all about on technology field. I think it's all about putting controls in, making sure that whatever business application you're rolling out, follow the necessary requirements. And I think today encryption and authentication are two very, very critical criteria for any business to run basically, because you need to make sure that whatever data you're sending across basically, whether it is a trusted or not untrusted network, needs to be encrypted so that there is a level of security there. And the data, the person who's sending the data, you need to make sure that the person who's sending the data is right. Because I could probably send a mail to Mr. Dubey and he knows me very well. I'm just saying, or I could send a mail to you, Giridhar, and you know me very well, but I sent along with my mail a bot or a malware basically, and that's it. There is no other thing to do. And we are all talking about, so I think, putting in controls is a big aspect to, any business. And that's where, companies like me, I've been selling, I've been selling security solutions right from 1994. I started my career selling antivirus software, and nobody liked, viruses basically. And that time people believed that, viruses are made by the antivirus companies basically.
Yes.
Because that's what they believed basically. And it was very tragic. In fact, I went to a hospital to make a sale and they asked me whether it was a tablet or it was a tablet or a bottle basically with, some drug in it basically, which will take care of the computer virus. So I think, we've evolved from there to a long, long way. And, having controls is what I believe is it all about, like we've been again talking about the car. The car is your mode of transport basically, it's going to take you from one place to other. So it's going to get you the business. The technology involved in the car, what you need basically is it all about basically, whether you have, and today, we are talking about cars that they're going to drive on their own basically. So the integration of IT, OT, we are talking about IT being able to, drive OT basically and vice versa basically, right? So we are all talking about integration. We're talking about network segmentation. We're talking about so many things, giving control. Like Alan said, I can sit in my car and, control what is happening in my house, air conditioning. And similarly, I can sit in my car and control what is happening in my air conditioning of my factory, basically, what temperature I need to have, basically. And we all want this control.
Rajesh, I'm sorry, I have to stop you. We have run out of time. So we
sure.
bring this conversation to a close. It's been an extremely interesting and very interactive discussion that we've had. I think we've all enjoyed this talk. My thanks to Dr. Durga Prasad Dubey, Alan Sanchez, and Rajesh Maurya, for participating in this discussion. I'm sure we can carry this on offline, but we have another session. So but thank you so much for being here evening, for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you, sir.
And you left us with a lot of interesting ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.